Welcome to the Crime Time Podcast. Today we're going to be talking about a very interesting case. It's the case of Johnny Gosch, who disappeared when he was 12 years old on September 5th, 1982. So, this is a very interesting case. I have done many days of research on this case, and the more I research, the more it looks like this is a multiple kidnapping in Iowa. So, let's get into today's podcast. So, Johnny Gosch was a paper boy. He ran the paper for the, don't come at me if I say this wrong, but the Des Moines paper, and he ran the paper every Sunday. And normally Johnny Gosch would run the paper with his dad every Sunday, but the night before, September 4th, 1982, Johnny was having dinner with his older sister and her fiance, along with his mother Noreen and his father. And Johnny Gosch told his mother Noreen that he was going to go to bed early that night so that he could get up early and run his paper and go ahead and get it done, because Johnny's hope was that he would save up enough money for a dirt bike. And Johnny asked his mother that night if he could go on the paper run by himself the next morning, because he felt that he was old enough to be able to run the paper himself. But his mother explained to him that the agreement when he even started running the paper is that Johnny would go with his father or another adult, because she did not see fit that it was safe for Johnny to run the paper by himself, which ended up turning out to be true, sadly. But let's start diving into this case. So Johnny Gosch woke up September 5th and decided that he was old enough to run the paper by himself and that he was not going to wake his father up. So Johnny headed out the front door and grabbed his wagon, but the thing about this wagon is that it had a loose wheel, so it would squeak anytime Johnny would pull it. Well, later on we found out that Johnny actually left at 5:55 a.m. that morning, which was a little bit earlier than Johnny and his father would normally go. So Johnny started heading down for the church only a couple blocks away. And as he was on his way to the church to pick up his papers for his route that morning, there was a man in a car that pulled up and asked, "Hey, can you give me directions to this street?" Johnny decided he was not going to stop and talk to this man, so Johnny went about his way. And the reason we know this is because there was actually a paper boy not too far behind him, also on his way to pick up the Sunday papers. So Johnny continues to walk down this street, and the man makes a U-turn in the middle of the road and follows Johnny. But by the time the man got up to where Johnny was already at the church to pick up his Sunday paper. So the man pulls onto the corner of the curb and slides over to the passenger door and opens it up and is yelling at the other kids, "Hey, I need help to get to so-and-so road. Can you come and give me directions?" And all these kids knew not to answer this man, so they just kept ignoring him. So Johnny went about his way and started tying up the papers for his route that morning. And there was another paper boy named Mike there. And Johnny knew Mike pretty well from running the papers every week. So he told Mike, "Hey, do you see that man over there? He's kind of strange." And so Mike went about his business and kept doing his papers to get ready for his run that morning. And Johnny just wanted to make sure that Mike was aware that there was this strange man yelling to get directions from these kids. So the man continues to ask people for directions, and Johnny starts to get really nervous. So he wraps up a few more papers and then looks at Mike and says, "I'm scared. I think I'm just gonna go home." So Johnny grabs his wagon and his family dog, because he had brought the family dog with him that morning, and he heads for his house. and this is the last time that Johnny Gosch was ever seen again. So his father wakes up at 6:30 that morning to get ready with Johnny to go on the paper run, but his father had noticed that Johnny had already left for the paper run, so the father went out looking for Johnny. Sadly, he did not find Johnny. All he found was the wagon about 2 blocks away. So his father knew at this point that something was not right and Johnny was gone. So he went back to the house, and the mother called the police and told them, "Our child is missing. Can y'all get down here ASAP?" And long story short, the police took about 45 minutes to show up, which was not really normal for this town, as the police station was only a couple blocks away from her house. And so, while Noreen, the mother, was waiting for the police to get there, she went ahead and called the Des Moines registry and asked for the numbers of the other paper boys that were also out that morning in hopes that one of them had seen what had happened to Johnny. Well, Noreen gets a hold of one of the mothers, and the mother explained to Noreen what had happened, what her son had saw, and that there was a strange man following Johnny and that he kept asking for directions. So when the police do finally arrive, about 45 minutes, Noreen goes ahead and lets them know, "Hey, this is what the other mother said, like, my son is missing." The cops told Noreen to fill out a missing persons slip, and so she does. But as she's filling it out, she's telling the cops about what the other mother told, that Johnny was walking down the street and the strange man kept following him. And the cops told her that this could be a runaway kid. And Noreen described to the cops that her son was a really good little boy, that he had never ran away from home before, and that there would be no reason for him to run away from home. And so the cops say, "Well, we will go talk to the other families, but as of right now, he is a runaway child." And Noreen, quote by quote, said, "Did you hear me? This other mother agrees that my son has been taken." So the cops just explain, "Okay, we will go talk to the other family." So Noreen at this point, she can't really do much because Johnny is missing. She knows this now, and there's not much that she can do except for wait to see what the police get from the other parents. So later on that evening, the mother calls the other mother of the child who saw what happened, calls Noreen and says, "Look, so the cops came and I gave them my statement, but they did not bring anything to write it down. They had no recorder, nothing. They had no way of putting down her story." And that was just a little weird that the cops did not write down a single thing about Johnny. So Noreen knew in this moment that she was going to be the only one looking for her son. So Noreen and her husband hire a private investigator to look for her son. And they spent a lot of money looking for Johnny. And I'm sure you have heard of this case before because Johnny was the first ever child to be put on the milk carton. Johnny's mother had to fight really hard and go to the legislation branch and get certain laws changed so that people would start looking for her son. And when the town that Johnny's from got with that the cops were not really looking for her son, the rest of the town started getting nervous because they're supposed to be able to trust the police, and the police were not doing much for Noreen in finding her son. So now the whole town is aware of what has happened, and they all start keeping an eye out for Johnny. But Johnny has not been found at this point. So Noreen does not lose hope. She's like, "I am going to find my son Johnny, no matter what it takes." So on So on March 1997, Johnny's mother was awoken at 2:30 a.m. by Johnny at her front door. But the thing about this is, Johnny was with a very strange man. And then again, she has not seen Johnny in years because Johnny is now 27 years old, and the last time she saw him, he was 12. And so she lets them in, and she's like, "Is it you, Johnny?" And Johnny pulls up his shirt to show a birthmark on his chest, and he also has a different colored shoulder than the rest of his skin. So this confirms to Noreen that this is her son, Johnny. And so she lets Johnny in with this strange man, and Noreen tells us that they stayed for an hour and a half, but Johnny would not give any personal details about his whereabouts, where he was going, what he was in. It was more of just them letting him see his mother. And my assumption is that that was the last time he was ever going to see his mother. Johnny was now 27. And so Noreen wants people to know that Johnny no longer looks like himself. He has pitch black hair, and he was wearing a t-shirt and jeans. And later on, Noreen finds out basically by another man, 21-year-old Paul Benaki. I don't know how to say his last name, but his name was Paul. And in 1989, he told his attorney that he had also been abducted and that he had seen Johnny and been taken part of his kidnapping, and that Johnny was now in a sex ring for children and minors. So this was hard news for Noreen, and she did not want to believe it at first. She asked the man things about Johnny, and Paul knew a lot about Johnny that nobody would have known. And we are not sure of these things that Paul told Noreen, but Noreen told everybody, "Hey, look, this man knows things about my child that nobody would know about, that I have not told anybody about, so obviously this is real." Well, there was another case a little bit later on of a boy in Tulsa, Oklahoma, yelling out for a woman walking down the street. He was yelling, "Help! Help me, please." And as the woman turns to look at this boy, he gets dragged away by two men. So we're not completely sure if this was Johnny, but Noreen truly believes that this was Johnny calling for help when he was being taken back to the ring. So another instance that had happened during all this is that Noreen got a photo on her front doorstep of 3 little boys gagged and tied. And Noreen went straight to the police, but the police told her later on that these were 3 missing boys in Florida. 2 of the boys had been identified later on, but there was 1 boy that still had not been identified, and Noreen believes that this is Johnny. And there's a lot of conspiracy theories out there that believe that that is Johnny. Nobody can prove it, but they truly believe that that's Johnny. But Johnny looked in really bad condition. And mind you, this was way before Johnny had showed up to her doorstep, because Johnny would have been a teenager in these photos. So we are still not sure if that was a picture of Johnny, because the other child was never identified. But because Noreen got these scary pictures on her doorstep and they were delivered to her front door, she believes that this is Johnny and that somebody wanted her to know that Johnny had been kidnapped and that Johnny was still alive, but he was not okay. And so Noreen put out a statement, because I watched her video on YouTube for Johnny's 40th year disappearance, and Noreen said that if this is not Johnny, this was a really sick joke, because she really believes her son's still out there and that she was gonna keep looking for him until she found him. But after Johnny had came to see Noreen, she pretty much knew Johnny was not gonna come home. She actually wrote a book, Why Johnny Can't Come Home. I have not read this book yet because I have not been able to get my hands on this book. It's really expensive, but I plan to read this book eventually because this case is wild. So anyways, now we believe that Johnny is in a sex trafficking ring, and if you know anything about minor sex trafficking rings, Johnny is now at the age where they would no longer need him. And if Johnny has not came out to the public and said, hey, I'm still alive, then Johnny's most likely no longer with us. And as sad as it seems, it's very much more likely than them to just let Johnny go at his age now, unless Johnny is now running the ring with these other men. Because mind you, the people who kidnapped Johnny would now be in their 80s, 90s. So they are most likely not still alive, and if they are, they could have recruited Johnny. Once again, these are all conspiracy theories that I've read, not something that has been fully looked through to see if it could even be true. But anyways, so there's two men that Noreen believes that kidnapped her son. And one of them's name is Philip, and the other is John David. And I'm not releasing last names just for both my safety and theirs. So if you want to find who they are, you can always just Google it. I found it as easy as Googling it. But Noreen truly believes that these are the men that kidnapped her son. And they were actually arrested for child pornography. So it's not too much to say that these men could have been a part of the kidnapping of her son. But the crazy thing about this case is that there were other boys also taken in a similar instance. So we're going to go ahead and talk about these other boys before we go back to Johnny. So, one's name is Eugene Martin. Eugene Martin was taken also in Des Moines, Iowa. And I can't remember if that's exactly where Johnny was taken, but he worked for the newspaper, so I'm assuming that's also where he was taken. But this boy was taken on August 12th, 1984. And the thing about Eugene Martin is he was also a paper boy. And so the fact that they were both taken in the same time, or in the same town, 2 years apart, and they were both paper boys, just kind of seemed sus. So people are trying to link Eugene Martin to Johnny Gosch. So I couldn't find much on Eugene Martin, but I do know he was taken in the early morning while delivering papers. There's not much about that case that I could find myself, which seems a little strange to me, but maybe the parents just did not want a bunch of the boys' information out, which is understandable. And just by the way, Eugene Martin was 13 years old, so he was only 1 year older than Johnny when he was taken. So they're the same age, same town, 2 years apart. You can kind of connect the dots. The next boy's name is Mark James Warren Allen. It's a really long name, but we're just going to call him Mark for this video just because his name's long. So, Nancy, his mother, said that he was a handful and gotten in a lot of trouble often, and he went back and forth between Des Moines, Iowa, and Minnesota. So once again, boys are getting kidnapped in Des Moines. So March 29th, 1986, 2 years after Eugene was taken, the kids were all having pizza when Mark told Nancy, his mom, that he wanted to walk down the street to his friend's house because they were most likely gonna go see a movie, and that he wanted to play with his friend. So Nancy said that that would be alright, and she watched him walk to the end of the street where Mark disappeared behind the bushes and his mother could no longer see him. And Nancy just assumed that Mark was okay and made it to his friend's house. But Mark was never seen again. So mind you, Mark was not a paper boy, but he was walking alone. He was very young. He was in Des Moines, And so we kind of just assume that Mark, Eugene, and Johnny were all taken by this sex trafficking ring due to their stories lining up so much. And I wish I could have found more on Mark James Allen, but once again, Mark's case is still open, so there's not a whole lot that you can find out about him. But we do have to assume that they were all taken by the same person. And if they were not, then hopefully one day Eugene or Mark will show up or be found so that their families can be put at rest. Same with Johnny Gosch. Because I feel like the hardest part is probably not knowing if your son's still alive. So, I have read a lot of conspiracy theories on this, and I would just like to put a couple of them out there so that y'all can basically have your own thoughts on what happened. So let's open up Reddit and read a few of the conspiracy theories. Okay, so this first Reddit conspiracy is kind of sad, but also very interesting. So, I can't find the user's name, but he tells a story about Johnny Gosch showing up to his mother's house and how he felt unsafe. And I did not know this, but he said that he had to leave because if they found out that he had came to see his mother, they would kill him. And this is something that we knew would probably happen as Johnny was older and he probably was not supposed to go see his mother, but he did. So, in July 1997, a partially decomposed man's body was found in a cabin of a semi in a town in Colorado. He believed to be in his 20s. His hair was long and part of it was braided, which would coincide with Johnny trying to make himself look Native American. The John Doe was believed to have been living in transit life and had no ID, obviously. Also, when Johnny left Noreen's apartment in March, he said that he had to get out of Des Moines altogether, and this town in Colorado is supposedly one of the places he was taken as a child. If you had to skip town, wouldn't you at least head towards an area you were somewhat familiar with? So, there's some comments underneath that say, unfortunately, it wouldn't be too unlikely if this was the case since he was worried about being killed. It would be a miracle if he survived this long. Poor guy. So, on this certain Reddit post, a lot of people believe Johnny is dead. There was a John Doe found. And of course, because Johnny was so young, his fingerprints and his teeth and all that the cops can use to identify him would not have been in the system to say for his age, I'm assuming, because there was a reason that this John Doe was not able to be identified, and if this is Johnny, it's very sad that his life had to end, but Johnny was scared that they were going to kill him, so this could have possibly happened, and I feel so sad for Noreen, and this is probably why she has not been vocal about her son in the past few years. She's probably came to the decision that her son might be gone, and as sad as it is to say, it's the most likely case in this because of everything that has happened, and we don't want that to happen, but Noreen's family at some point has to be put to rest because Johnny's not coming home either way. He is now owned by this ring, and it's not that simple just to walk away and leave. Yes, this Paul man walked away and left, but there could have been hits out for him until he made the news. And now that he's made the news, like, if he gets killed, obviously people would start noticing, hey, like, Paul's dead, so, obviously these people are just gonna kill them if they leave. So, let's read one more conspiracy theory before we end this video. So, I couldn't find any more conspiracy theories on this just because everybody kind of feels the same about this, but I did find some questions that people are asking that they do want to be answered, which we're probably not going to get the answers, it being so far along now. But their first question was Johnny's dad involved in the disappearance? I do not believe that Johnny's dad was involved in the disappearance for the reason of Johnny was supposed to wake up his dad. He decided not to. He decided to go on his own. I don't see why Johnny's dad would have been a part of this disappearance. If his dad was a part of this disappearance, it just does not line up for me to believe that Johnny's dad was part of the disappearance, but he could have been. Was his dad ever investigated? We're not sure about that, but it could be part of the case. But I don't believe so, just because they spent so much money looking for him. There were other kids that went missing at the same time. It just leads me to believe that Johnny's dad was not a part of this. The next one was he abducted to be a part of a pedophilia ring? At this point, yes. Everybody believes he was. Johnny obviously was running from somebody. He was scared. He knew he was going to be killed because he escaped. He was running from them. So, yes, he was abducted by a pedophilia ring. As Paul told us, yes, this is true. He was. Did he really return to his mother in 1997 to only immediately disappear again? Yes, I believe that he did go see his mother. She said he had the birthmarks that she knew her son had when he was born up till the time he was 12 years old. So yes, I believe that he did go see his mother, and the reason that he did leave his mother's house and disappear again is because he knew that they would kill his family. So obviously Johnny ran again so that they would not kill his family, and they would only kill him if it came to that. So I do believe that he went and saw his mother, and I do believe that Johnny was scared and ran so that his family wouldn't get killed. The next one is Paul Benaki, or whatever his last name, believable. Is that story believable? This is where I have a really hard time, because I feel like if Paul did escape and go to the news about all this, that they would have killed him. The fact that he was not killed from escaping is a little questionable. Did Paul do this in the benefit of getting money? Did he do this in the benefit of being famous? These are questions we probably will never know. But is the story believable? That's for you to decide on your own, because it is a little questionable. And the last one is Noreen Gosch simply suffering from delusions because caused by grief? Now, this is where I don't know, because grief can do a lot to many people. As we know, almost everybody has suffered from grief at some point in their life. But I don't believe that she was making up the story about Johnny coming back. I don't believe that that was a lie at all, because if her son knew that he was gonna be killed, I feel like he would have visited his mother and been like, hey, I am still alive, but they are gonna kill me, and I need to get away. Because as a daddy's girl, I would want to go see my dad one last time, knowing that I would be killed. I would want to go say my goodbyes and at least see them one last time. He hadn't seen them in many, many years. He knew that they knew that he was alive, and he wanted to have one last goodbye to his mother. So I do believe that Johnny went to see his mother one last time. And once again, you can all feel how you feel, but from my point of view, I do believe that Johnny went and saw his mother, and I do believe that Johnny is dead now. Could it be the John Doe? It could possibly be, but I hope that one day Noreen could be put to peace, knowing if her son's alive or dead, because she has never stopped looking for her son. And that is one more thing I would like to make a point about, is Noreen did write something for her son when she did the interview on his 40th year disappearance. And I would just like to make a note of that real quick. It says, "I love you so much, and I'm so sorry this happened to you. But if you've grown to survive this and became a man, I'm twice as proud of you, because you had the odds against you throughout this, and I'm still here. You can find me and contact me and let me know you're okay. I love you, son." And Noreen went to explain that she no longer lives in that house where Johnny grew up, but she does still live in the same town, and people know her and know where she lives. So if Johnny, if you're still out there and would like to find your mother, she's in the same town, and she is there with open arms because she loves you so much, and she hopes that you will come home one day. But as far as if he'll come home one day, it'll be left a mystery unless we get more news later on down the road. But as this is a 50-something-year-old case now, I don't see this case ever being solved. Now, as far as Eugene and Mark, I can't say if they're alive or not, because they did not run back to their parents. They did not come to see their parents for one last time. But they are old enough where the child pedophilia will no longer need them. So if they were going to kill Johnny at 27 years old, I have a good feeling it's because he was now over the age. Nobody would want to use him anymore. And the same goes for the other boys. They are in their 40s now. So I do believe that all three boys have been put to rest, and I just hope one day that their families can get the closure that they need to move on from these cases. So, anyways, if you liked this podcast, give me some ideas down below of cases you would like to see so that I can do those cases next. And I will be bringing y'all a lot of interesting cases from here on out. So if you'd like to watch them, please click down below, subscribe, leave comments, and like this video.